Well, yes. I mean, if you look at the whole scope of this nearly 20-year war, it wasn't that long ago where the Taliban insurgency was relatively limited to areas of the south and the east of Afghanistan, areas of the Taliban's traditional strength. And only in recent years has the Taliban been able to expand and extend its footprint and its control to areas far beyond the south and the east. And indeed, as we know, the latest fighting has mainly been in the north of Afghanistan, which doesn't have a history of having a strong Taliban presence. Only in the last few years has that changed. So the fact that the Taliban insurgency has morphed from what had previously been a very limited, narrowly focused insurgency into a nationwide insurgency that threatens to take over the government on the whole, yes, I do think that is an admission of failure for U.S. forces over nearly 20 years in Afghanistan. I imagine that some U.S. military commanders were very unhappy about President Biden's decision and would have wanted to stay there. But keep in mind that President Biden made the decision to leave Afghanistan not because of concerns about the insurgency or its strength or its ability to get stronger, but it was more about the issue of terrorism and the threat posed by terrorism. President Biden decided that the terrorism threat in Afghanistan did not warrant U.S. forces staying in Afghanistan. He was looking at Afghanistan through the lens of al-Qaeda and ISIS and to what extent they could pose a threat to U.S. interests far beyond Afghanistan, including the U.S. homeland itself. So the optics are terrible that the U.S. is intensifying its withdrawal at the very moment when the Taliban insurgency is reaching unprecedented points. But this is very much in line with the policy that President Biden wanted to follow. He was going to make his decision to withdraw not based on the insurgency and its strength, but on this separate issue of the threat posed by groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS. And one can certainly acknowledge the gains. U.S. officials like to talk about the gains. I think they overstate the gains. But, you look at what has happened over the last 20 years, particularly in terms of human development indicators, literacy rates, the number of girls in schools, access to clean water and sanitation. These are things that have improved. But certainly as we see the current trajectory of things in Afghanistan now, those gains could easily be reversed, given that, with the Taliban in a position to take over even more power, you have to worry about the implications for those factors that I mentioned before. And certainly the plight of women, of Afghan women, that is very much something that's going to be concerning. So absolutely, I think one could argue that the U.S.'s biggest achievements in the war in Afghanistan were made within a few months after it entered the country, when it eliminated the al-Qaeda sanctuaries, which was the main reason it entered Afghanistan to start with. And ever since it achieved that objective early on in the war, it's really struggled to articulate a strategy for being in Afghanistan, and it's struggled to justify why it needs to continue to be in Afghanistan after all these years.